Joining us right now is D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson. And Councilman Mendelson, thanks for joining us. I'm concerned that you're going to, this is going to hurt your reputation because I'm about to compliment you.
No, that's fine. I like compliments.
Well, I mean, I think you've come up with a very sound, rational idea here. Last year, your council approved a 5-year, $162 million tax cut plan for the district. The first wave of those cuts went through, but you have seen that revenue for the city is expected to be higher than originally planned, and so you're trying to accelerate some of those tax cuts. You're getting criticized. I think it's a great idea. It's good that that our elected officials think this way, that it's the people's money, not the government's money, and you're trying to return it and stick to the plan and even and accelerate it. Am I getting it wrong here, and why are you being criticized?
Well, I think you're getting it right. I'm getting criticized because there are some folks who feel that we should, as they put it, maintain flexibility to increase spending on necessary programs. I think the Washington Post editorial got it right this morning when it said we have not shortchanged public education or public safety, affordable housing. We've not shortchanged those. The tax cuts that we're trying to accelerate were recommended by a tax revision commission. They're really pretty modest. There's slight reductions in the income tax rates, a reduction in the business tax rate to the same level as Maryland. I mean, this is not radical stuff that we're doing. We have the ability to accelerate the cuts, not do all $160 million this year, but to do more than we had originally thought, and we should.
And I've been observing things here at WMAL for the last 3 years, observing things at the D.C. Council, and I haven't noticed a lot of big spending programs or a lot of big public assistance plans that have been proposed that haven't gone through. What is it that the mayor and her allies on the council are saying that you've been denying the people of the district?
Well, they're not specific. They're not saying there's something that's being denied. I frankly think that for some, what they want is to not move up the cuts so that then there's the ability next year to reconsider and perhaps repeal some of them.
But there's I think there's something else here, isn't there? I hate to interrupt you, but there's some class warfare going on here. They're specifically criticizing you because some of these tax breaks are going to go to some of the wealthier residents in the district.
Yes, there is some of that, but I think that's actually a misstatement. Overwhelmingly, what the personal income tax reductions do is to make our income tax the most progressive in the sense that poor people pay a lesser percentage of their income in taxes. With these tax cuts, we will have the most progressive income tax in the country, and I think that's fair. At the same time, we're providing some relief for the most wealthy, but to characterize it as being about tax cuts for millionaires is inaccurate and misleading.
Let me ask you this question here. Do you think it's interesting that the mayor actually voted and approved these recommendations that were from an independent commission to make these cuts? The mayor approved it before she was elected. Do you think that's kind of ironic now that she's in this new now that the mayor's in the seat, that now that they're fighting you on it?
Well, yes, and I would add it's not that as mayor she's gotten some new insight. I think she's trying to have it both ways. So she's saying on the one hand, she supports the tax cuts she voted for, and on the other hand, she wants flexibility to be able to spend the money. And the only way that she would have flexibility to spend the money is if she were to repeal the tax cuts. So I think there's some doublespeak going on.
What does this tell you about the new makeup of the council? Some of your longtime allies are no longer on the council, and is there kind of a different mood these days when you go to work?
I wouldn't say there's a different mood, but I do think part of the dynamic here is that I think 7 of the members of the council were not on the council last year when we voted on this, and that makes it the dynamic is that they don't have the same fidelity to what we voted on that the other members do.
While I've got you here, Councilmember Mendelson, I'd love to touch base with you on the status of the gun laws in the District of Columbia.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Yeah, enough with the kumbaya, Councilman. No, we saw yesterday that the federal judge has now reenacted the what they call the good reason clause until the next step. What are you as the council doing about these laws, though, to relook at it and see what we can do with regard to the Second Amendment in the district?
Well, we're doing nothing at the moment because we did everything last fall, and that's what's now being challenged in court. What we did was we revised our law. What our law was when it was struck down last year was a complete ban on anybody other than law enforcement being able to get a license to carry. The complete ban was not sustainable, and the court struck it down. So we had to rewrite the law. But what we did that most people don't realize is that we went back to what the Congressional Act was adopted in 1932, which was very similar to what the law has been since before the Civil War, that a person has to have a good reason to be able to carry a dangerous weapon on the street. And the philosophy behind the way we wrote it was that if we're going to deem that somebody is safe to carry, not a threat, then they can carry, and otherwise we have to be able to protect public safety. I do want to make an important point. The district, as the nation's capital, is different than any other jurisdiction in this country. So the way this argument plays out in, let's say, Wyoming is going to be different than in the nation's capital, where you've got the president. There have been shots fired at the White House in the last couple of years. And where we have members of Congress, one of whom was almost assassinated a couple of years ago. We know that the district, the nation's capital, is very different than anywhere else, and therefore the public safety needs are different and higher.
Well, but Judge Scullin's injunction of your current policy, the current law, it kept in force the federal zones near the White House. There's still a prohibition on carrying there. That didn't change.
Correct. But the issue here wasn't really about that. As far as I know, that wasn't challenged at all.
Right.
What was challenged was whether the language that Congress adopted 80 years ago, the language that's been in effect since before the Civil War, is constitutional or not.
Understood.
And all we know at this point is that the court has said with the stay that they want to get it fully briefed and hear the arguments. I think we're defensible. But, we'll see how the arguments play out.
Thank you, Councilman. I just wanted to point out that the judge did remain in place all of the unique natures of the District of Columbia and the issue of firing shots at the White House and such. I think that stayed in. But we will watch this, as you know, and it's always good to have you. Thanks for joining us. Again, Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the D.C. Council.